Welcome back to Perspective. We're still in a discussion with Elaine Pearson from Australia Human Rights Watch. We were talking about Aceh, and I don't know if you said you're not judging the Sharia law or whatever Kanun or whatever bylaw they are making, but what do you think can be done? First of all, by the Aceh legislative, and then maybe the governor as well. What can they do to improve the situation as to regarding this kanun that are discriminatory in nature?
Well, I think there's a few things that can be done. So firstly, in terms of the bylaws that were recently introduced on same-sex relations and adultery or zina, these have not yet been approved by the central government authorities.
Central government?
The Home Affairs Ministry actually has to approve them, and they have a certain time period to do so. Now, I think the fact that these actually contradict Indonesia's obligations under its own national laws and under international treaties that Indonesia has ratified, there's actually space for Home Affairs Ministry to say, no, actually this contravenes Indonesia's national laws, and so they shouldn't approve those bylaws. Regarding the sort of existing ones that we were talking about earlier on the dress codes, and I think also on seclusion, or the bylaw that criminalises men and women being together at the same place. Khalwat. This one, I think, there certainly should be a review of how these have been implemented, and I think that the governor of Aceh would be well placed to actually do that kind of review. And we have documented lots of concerns in the way that communities have taken it upon themselves to enforce these bylaws. And so you've seen, mobs, members of the community breaking into someone's house, raiding houses, beating up, young couples who they presume have committed acts of adultery. In some cases, we know that these are work colleagues who've been together, students studying together, and we're really concerned about the effect that this has. So I think there needs to be a review at looking at how these laws have been implemented, what abuses have taken place, and ultimately consideration should be given to revoking bylaws.
The first step would be to look at it in implementation rather than question the law itself.
Yeah, I think exactly. And I mean, I think you want to look at the law and whether it contradicts Indonesia's own national obligations and obligations under the Constitution, that men and women should be treated equally as equal citizens. And we have certainly found in our research that we have quite a lot of concerns about these bylaws, that they don't meet those obligations.
Has anybody actually informed the central government about saying, like, look, this law that you approve actually for Aceh go against the national law or higher law?
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, we've had discussions with the government. Komnas Perempuan has done a lot of work in this area and has been lobbying quite hard. Under the previous administration, nothing really happened on those laws. I do note that the new Minister of Home Affairs has actually said that he is going to review a lot of these discriminatory bylaws, not just the ones in Aceh, but all across Indonesia. And I think the concern is that, these started in Aceh, but we're noticing in more and more provinces that there are also local bylaws. So it's starting to sort of sweep across Indonesia, where forcing women to wear the hijab, forcing civil servants to wear the hijab, also in public schools.
So you see that what is happening in Aceh is also watched by the other regions and maybe taken as a model.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's why it's really important that the government shows that it's concerned, it's going to actually act on the recommendations of Komnas Perempuan and actually look into reviewing and revising whether these bylaws actually contravene Indonesia's own obligations under the Constitution.
And do you think the current government with the new Home Affairs Minister has the ability or the willingness even to do so?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, they've been open to having some discussions with us. We've presented our concerns to the Home Affairs Ministry.
Did they invite you, or
we approached them for a meeting. We had a meeting with them yesterday. And certainly I think they're very interested in learning more about these issues. And as I say, I mean, the Minister had previously committed to doing some kind of review. So we hope that process, won't take too long, and that there is attention paid to particularly the bylaws that affect women. So in the past, there have been some bylaws that have been struck down by the central government. But these have dealt with other issues, like tax, for instance. But the ones affecting women, we haven't seen so far.
So there is a precedent where the government actually struck down bylaws that were
local bylaws, yes.
In Aceh.
Yes. Another example in Aceh, not such a positive one, but there was a bylaw to set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Aceh,
right,
which would be in accordance, with various commitments there. However, the Home Affairs Ministry previously, this was several years ago, said no, that couldn't happen until there is a national Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So that's another example. So there certainly is opportunities for the central government to challenge these issues.
And do you think that compared to, let's say, pre-tsunami, is it much easier to get input from Aceh? Is there hindrance, obstacles to getting into the information that you need?
It's still difficult, I would say. I mean, I was up there a few years ago and conducting a number of these interviews with women. Women are still very reluctant to speak publicly about these issues. They're very afraid of the consequences. They're often ashamed, particularly if it was a Kalwat offence.
Issues, yeah.
So it's still, I would say, more difficult probably than other parts of Indonesia. But at the same time, the fact that we can actually travel there, we can travel around, we can conduct interviews. Civil society in Aceh has grown, tremendously. I think these are all very positive, positive things.
Civil society in Aceh. In any society, civil society is a major control on whatever the government or the authorities are doing. Indonesia itself, civil society is not yet very mature, but what about in Aceh? It's been such a short time, 10 years, but you said it's thriving now, the civil society there?
Well, I think they're still sort of growing, but certainly compared to 10 years ago, there's quite a lot of groups. And I think one of the positive things coming out of the tsunami is that a lot of money flowed into Aceh, into development projects, but also into building the capacity of local Acehnese civil society groups to do many things. And so one of the benefits of that has been that groups are there now, looking into the problems that are affecting the Acehnese population, and are starting to sort of develop services or develop ways of addressing these concerns.
Compared to, like, say, 10 years ago, do you think Aceh is closing itself now? Actually, we should cut first and then we'll resume after this. The question will remain the same.
Okay.
We will have to cut for a while and then we'll be back. Please stay with us.